Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, sometimes you get that chill that you just can't shake. And you know, if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light but in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. If you are, hit subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Give us the old thumbs up, the like, the 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're pretty much everywhere. Over at places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd really appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, we're on the Instagram, we're on the Letterboxd, and we're on the TikTok for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because you know what, if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, guess what? We love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please, pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a good one. It is a new film. It's out on Blu-ray now and various on-demand platforms as well, I do believe, from our friends at Will Go USA. And the film is called Bone Cold. It is a really fascinating thriller of the story of two elite snipers, a sniper duo, as it were. They're on a mission and they get some bad intel and it results in a tragic civilian death. And they're trying to get out of the area. They're trying to escape, get exfilled, get back home. But there is a mysterious force, almost a creature really, that's hiding in the shadows and is stalking them as they try to fight their way to safety. And time is running out as the creature and various other enemies are closing in. It's a little piece of independent cinema, but it's actually really, really a nice little bottled up thriller, which I enjoyed immensely. And we had the unique pleasure of sitting down and talking with the writer and director of the film, one and only Billy Hanson, about the origins of the story, making the film in the dead of winter, and so very much more. But like I said, if this sounds of any interest to you or our conversation, which you're about to listen to, go check out Bone Cold. It is available on Blu-ray and various on-demand platforms right now. But as always, first off, please enjoy our talk with writer-director Billy Hanson, because between you and me, it's a darn good one. No, I mean, obviously, just to kick this off officially, just thank you so much for the time today, man. I mean, and congrats on the
Yeah,
movie. I thought it was a hell of a lot of fun.
thank you very much, man. Yeah, it's
I
been
mean,
it's been
walk me
phenomenal.
through, I guess, the origin of this story on your end.
The origin of it was really was like one single image of this guy in the snowy woods running from something like a creature in the distant background. Like that's kind of what it started with, and then I just started pulling it apart and asking who he was and what the monster was, and then formed very organically from there.
No, I mean, is it because I mean, I plugged in the disc, I was going through the special features. Is it true that you were kind of coming up with a lot of this on the fly, just sort of in the initial early?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like we were in a situation where we had to really take advantage of this small window of time.
Right.
So I had the idea in November of 2018, and then I got people on board. And as soon as I did that, we started talking about it. We realized our only window, if we didn't want to wait another year, was to start shooting in February. So
Right.
like idea in November, and then so it was like scripting, casting, pre-pro until February. And like in February, I still hadn't written the very end of the movie. Like I knew generally how it was going to end, but I hadn't written it yet. And so it was, yeah, we were assembling train tracks in front of the train, I think is what I said in the special features. I'm like, it's absolutely accurate.
That's definitely a little bit of a different beast when you're hopping from, say, doing your own short to doing a feature.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening.
Now, I mean, talk to me about just casting and finding your actors for this, because I mean, honestly, these two guys really did a great job with this, and I mean, we really sort of got into the tension of the moment, which I mean, I really appreciated.
Awesome. Yeah, that one of the things I hear first a lot of the time when people watch the movie is the actors are really good.
Yeah.
And John Stoddard is a good friend of mine. I've been friends with him for a long time. And I wanted to work with him on a bigger project. He and I did a pilot together years ago, and we just stayed close since then because we had such a good time on that. And so when this came up, I called him and I was like, "Do you want to play a Navy SEAL sniper and just go to Maine and shoot this crazy thing with me?" And he was immediately like, "Yes, absolutely, I'm in." And then we went through a casting process to find Marco because that role was heavy, and I knew that we were going to need someone really compelling in that part. So we saw a lot of great people. And then when Matt came in, he just kind of blew us away, and I was like, yes, he gets exactly what we're doing. Like he understands this really, really well. And yeah, I think our casting director even said, like, okay, it's Matt or I walk. I was like, no, 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 we're all in agreement. Matt's great. And so yeah, he just kind of blew us away. And from there, the whole cast was basically a combination of friends and people that we found in the casting process who were just absolutely dynamite. We cast Jen Ko, who plays Mel, John's wife in the movie,
Yeah.
and she was another one, a powerhouse that just came in and kind of knocked everyone's socks off. And then after we cast her, we were looking for the little girl, and we knew we had to find, we had to find a mixed race little girl about 9 years old, and our casting director Judy Belay did a great job bringing in just a long line of incredibly talented kids. And then Trinity Bliss came in and again knocked everybody's socks off. So yeah, it's a cast just full of really great performers.
No, absolutely, man. And I mean, and it's one of those things where, especially, and I mean, something I appreciated about it is that, I mean, obviously, you're shooting on a quick, you've got little to no budget, but it's a film that felt very big and felt very cinematic. I mean, how important was it for you to sort of, I guess, accentuate the positive and sort of keep maybe perhaps the negative a little pushed back when you had to?
Yeah, it was really important. I was very acutely aware of our limitations for all of it. And I think I pulled from a lot of my experience on several different types of projects. Like my career has spanned it's taken a very strange path, but I've worked on everything from like children's sitcoms to cheap unscripted shows to music videos and everything. So I kind of knew, not just me actually, like the whole crew, we all kind of knew where to put the money to make sure the money ended up on the screen. That's one thing that the cinematographer Ben Meredith and I talked about a lot, was like, in talking about what cameras to use and everything, how do we capture the beauty and the detail in the woods of Maine? How do we keep things visually interesting, and we're not just going to see trees, 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 trees? um so yeah, and then once we got to post, I sat with our editor Art O'Leary and I said, let's just do a cheap pass. Like, let's just watch the movie down. Anything that looks cheap, feels cheap, let's just take it out and work around it. So it was something that I was aware of, and I didn't want people to watch the movie and think, oh well, it's good for a low budget movie. I was like, no, I want them to be engaged in it. I don't want them to be taken out by that. Yeah, it was something that was on my mind quite a bit.
Well, and I mean, I think a lot of that goes to sort of I mean, without giving too much away,
Mm,
it speaks to sort of, I guess, the psychological nature of the quote unquote, bad guy or ominous force in the film.
yeah.
And I mean, I kind of appreciated how you kept him like almost out of phase. 'Cause, I mean, it was an interesting
Yeah.
visual effect that you used to sort of keep him very much. I mean, I don't want to say in the foreground, but I mean, obviously more in the background, and only put him in the foreground when you absolutely had to. I Can you talk a little bit about how you wanted to present sort of the bad guy, as it were?
Yeah, yeah. So it was always meant to be a sort of surreal creep factor more
Right.
than jump scares and really scary. So one of the things that we wanted to do, I wanted, we're dealing with snipers. They're dealing with long distances. Things are far away from them, and so through the film, this distant figure, this silhouette in the woods that shouldn't be there, is coming closer and closer and closer to them. And so we played with distance a lot in that way. But as it comes closer and closer, visually, I never really wanted the audience's eyes to comfortably land on it. I wanted it to be, as it got closer and closer, a very creepy, surreal thing. So yeah, the effects that we started putting, like, they don't really allow people's eyes to land. It's more of like a feeling that's right there. So we played a lot with effects that way. And like, the two guys that built the creature, the practical effects, Brian Hillard and Matt Cunningham, they're awesome. And they built this really statuesque, really sort of like frozen in time creature that we just kind of messed with in post to make him all shaky and strange and ethereal in a way.
Because I mean, in so many ways, this is a movie not necessarily about the creature. It's about the building of the stress in the situation, and I mean, and how that could be sort of the terror in and of itself. And I mean, when you're talking with your guys, I mean, especially I can imagine in the dead of February, in the middle of the forest, like how do you manage to sort of channel, I guess, the stress level? Because I mean, again, like I said, like from a horror standpoint, to me, this plays so much more psychological than, like we said before. It's about more than about the jump scare. It's very much going on in the audience's head.
Yeah, I think I sort of just centered everything on John's experience, right? Like, I really like kind of grabbed hold of him and I said, what's his journey that we're going on, his emotional trajectory? And I centered myself with that. So, in the beginning of the movie, the very opening scene, there's just a quick little glimmer of something is off, and you kind of know John is not okay.
Yeah.
And then to be thrown into a mission that is a little haphazard, a little is not really thought through very well, a lot of pressure put on his shoulders. I feel like you kind of get the sense of like, all right, this is not the right guy for this mission. And then with everything that happens, the way it unfolds, there's a mistake that's made, it's cost a life, and there's guilt weighed on it, and you start feeling that sense of isolation, of guilt, of the walls sort of closing in. We tried to ratchet up the pressure as much as we could with sound, with the visuals. Ben Meredith did this really cool thing where he's shooting all of Marco's stuff with a wider lens so that he looks bigger in the woods, or
Right.
I'm sorry, with this closer lens. Yeah, he's making Matt look bigger in the woods. He's making John look smaller in the woods, and so you can see the differences between the two men. So yeah, I mean, we just tried to sort of isolate John more and more visually and with audio as well.
Now, I mean, there's something really interesting, just especially from almost a social commentary standpoint, because I mean, it's really looking at seeing how these guys are getting used by the system, and I mean how they're being mistreated. I mean, was that sort of a key factor for you to give these guys some depth? Because I mean, again, they're not. I mean, they're human beings. We don't want them just to be sort of, the other end of the scope, or the guy that we're playing in Call of Duty. We want them to be people, right?
Absolutely. Like, so as I started pulling apart the story and realizing what I was dealing with, I said to myself, all right, I'm not a military person. I'm not from a military family. This is not my wheelhouse, really.
Right.
But right away, I said, I don't want to be exploitative about this. I don't want to treat this, I don't want to be flippant about any of this stuff. I want to take it very seriously. And what do I want to say exactly? So I set out not to vilify anyone in the armed forces. I didn't want to condemn the work that they do as inherently evil.
Right.
And I didn't want to, I didn't want to make it seem like they are the monsters. I really, had those prerequisites as I went into the story, and I had a few people that I would bounce the story off of and make sure, like, hey, how does this hit you? How does this go? And I had a really long conversation with an active duty Navy SEAL sniper who does this exact work. And I said, I laid out the story for him, and he told me, oh, yeah, that middleman, that guy that sends him on the mission, that's the right person to have as your bad guy. Okay, cool. All right. I feel like we did something right there. But there definitely is, I would say the villain of the movie is apathy. I would say,
No, I like that.
and this idea that you ignore what happens to the people that come back, like it's not a factor in your decision making. That to me is the real villain of the story.
No, 100% right, man. 100% right. And I mean,
Awesome.
again, it's one of those things that, at least for me, allowed me to appreciate it more on an emotional, psychological level. And I mean, I've got to ask, because these two characters are obviously in a very difficult situation, but a little bit haphazard, as you said. And to your own admission, you were in pre-pro in November, you shot in February. One could argue you made this entire film as a bit of a haphazard effort. I'm kind of curious at the end of it all, like, what was your stress? What was your kind of moment in sort of the wake of it all?
Filming it was a little bit of a blur. Like we were just go go go. I was sleeping like 2 hours a night.
Right,
I
right.
was I was on drinking coffee in the morning as much as I could just to stay awake and stay focused. But we actually had a really fantastic experience on set, and I think our crew, which was mainly comprised of people from Los Angeles who had never really been in that kind of weather, think everyone had a good time, and I think everyone appreciated what we were doing. After we saw the first dailies, I
Right.
think everyone, oh, this is beautiful footage. I get it now. But earlier I was very aware of that irony of like sending these people on a mission in the snow in the middle of the woods, and we didn't have the support we needed, that kind of thing. But one of the first conversations we had with everyone was, listen, you don't have to soldier through this. You don't have to power through it. If you're uncomfortable, just let us know. We'll figure it out. Our DP, he at one point looked at me. He's like, "I'm so sorry, I have to stop. My feet are completely numb." And we all looked down at his boots, and he's wearing these like leather boots. And we're like, "Oh, no, no, no!" So we stopped. He's like, "Listen, man, I'm from SoCal. I don't know how to do this." So we stopped production. We got his feet warm, and my mom was on her way to set, so I called my mom like, "Listen, can you pick up some muck boots for him?" And so we got him some boots, and then after that, it was fine. But yeah, we really tried to take care of everybody out there and make sure that they did not go through that same experience. So I hope no one was left with any trauma from that.
No, but I mean, I love that. I mean, the spirit of independent filmmaking does come down to, mom going, please go get my DP some boots. That really does encapsulate sort of what independent filmmaking is on so many different levels.
It's funny. I think people are kind of surprised when they see the movie, because I would talk about it for so long, and I would say, yeah, I got a group of my friends together, and we went and we crashed at my mom's house, and we shot, in our friend's land in Maine, and they kind of expect to see a movie that is in your mom's house and with your
Right.
friends, whatever. But then they see the movie for what it is, and they go, oh wow, this is a movie.
Now, I mean, I'm curious, and it's a bit of a loaded question, but it's one I always like to
Sure.
ask. Think back to Billy's younger days. Was there a movie or a moment that you saw as a young man watching these films? Because I mean, honestly, we all come to this business as fans first. I tend to find, like, was there
Yeah.
something that had the light bulb go off in your head that made you want to get into this business and be a storyteller?
I don't know if it's a specific moment. I mean, I know that there are movies that really that were very influential for me when I was a kid. I mean, I'm a 90s kid, so it was a lot of
Right.
like, True Lies for me is one of my
Oh,
favorites.
yeah.
Um and like Lethal Weapon and all those movies. And I was my dad and I used to watch movies constantly. So it was always a really big part of my life. Movies were always the thing. And I knew I wanted to at least be a storyteller for a long time. Like I was writing stories from a very young age, and I just sort of never quit. And you know, there are certain films I feel like have guided me, along the way to sort of be the storyteller, the filmmaker that I've come into. But I've always been, I've always kind of known I was headed here.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and I remember, and in film school, this is going to sound very pretentious, but one of my all-time favorite movies is The Wages of Fear, which is
Oh,
a French
no,
movie from the
perfect.
50s.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That is like my answer for what is your favorite movie. And like this French movie from the 50s that not a lot of people have seen is my absolute favorite movie. That one really cemented for me, like, yes, that is the kind of thing I want to talk about. That is a story about masculinity. It's a story that is so incredibly suspenseful, and it is just really cool at the same time. And that's I would love to make anything close to The Wages of Fear.
Well, man, you know what? And I mean, now that you say that, I love that, because I mean, it's that movie is such a psychological ride, and I mean, and so is this one. And I mean, again, it definitely shows what's formed you as a filmmaker. And I mean, I absolutely love that, because that Voyages of Fear is one of my favorite films as well.
Nice.
But I mean, just to put a bow on this, I mean, I gotta ask because I'll admit, like, I picked up the Blu-ray. I saw Bone Cold, and then I was like, that's an interesting title. And then I watched it, and I'm like, okay, no, that kind of makes sense from your perspective. Why Bone Cold?
So this is something that I've had to figure out myself, actually. I remember when the title came to me, it just sort of hit me. And
Right.
I was just walking around my apartment and it hit me like Bone Cold. I think it's called Bone Cold. And I walked into my wife and she was brushing her teeth in the bathroom and I just went, "Hey, I think my movie's called Bone Cold. What do you think?" And she just was like, "Okay, good, great." And then it just stuck. But I think why it stuck with me is it's very it's very organic
Right.
and it's very about something that's it's cold within yourself, and I think that's really why it stuck with me,
I
like
like
this
it.
deep chill that won't go away. Yeah, at some point someone asked me to change the title and I was like, no, absolutely not, I'm sorry, like I am kind of married to the title. I feel like it fits.
But you know
um
what, man? I mean, those are the best kind of movies, the kind that kind of seep into your bones and stay with you, and you want to keep talking about them. And I mean, and this definitely has a lot of those characteristics, man. I absolutely loved it. But I mean, honestly,
Thank you.
thank you so much for the time today, man, and congrats on the release of the movie.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.